We're back and talking about a lot of AI. This and more on your weekly cybersecurity news roundup. I'm Allie Diamond, and this is ThreatWire. Do you trust your phone? Do you trust your phone's operating system? This past week, Motorola and GrapheneOS announced that they entered a partnership to make graphene work on Motorola-produced phones. For context, GrapheneOS is an Android-compatible mobile operating system focused on security and privacy. Prior to this partnership, GrapheneOS only had production-level support for Pixel phones. The long-term partnership was established to bring capabilities of running GrapheneOS to Motorola-produced phones. In a statement on Twitter, GrapheneOS explains, "We're only going to support devices meeting all of our official hardware requirements, including proper long-term updates and hardware-based security features. Motorola is actively working on their next-gen devices meeting our requirements." GrapheneOS touts being highly selective with which mobile devices it's compatible with, optimizing for, quote, their merits rather than the project aiming to have broad device support. Regardless of the partnership, they make it clear that they will not compromise their device security. The drive for mobile-focused security and privacy is on the rise. This past fall, Apple announced the release of Memory Integrity Enforcement, which had many security professionals expressing that iPhones have become virtually unhackable. We covered this story in our September 15th, 2026 episode of ThreatWire. The confidence in Apple's security continues to rise as on February 26th, Apple announced that iPhones and iPads were approved by NATO to handle classified information without any third-party add-on solutions. GrapheneOS is said to be a secure and known mobile operating system, so this may be Motorola's bet to prove their hardware can also be securely trusted. Anthropic has had quite the week. Let's recap everything that we can so that we can know what's going on. On February 20th, Anthropic launched Claude Code Security, their take on AI-powered vulnerability scanning. It will also suggest patches for human review and counterattacks against threat actors already leveraging AI for this kind of vulnerability finding capability. It's explained to be more than just static code analysis, but also does reasoning and contextual code-based understanding. Right now, it's available to the enterprise and team customers in a limited capacity. It'll be interesting to see if this fully gets rolled out to all customers. As a reminder, OpenAI announced their code security tool, Aardvark, in October 2025 in a limited capacity to customers, but we haven't heard anything about it since. On October 24th, Anthropic announced that they had discovered that Chinese AI groups were using fraudulent accounts to train their own proprietary models against Claude. DeepSeek, Moonshot, and MinMax were named as models explicitly doing this illicit training. The distilling attacks took place across 16 million exchanges across 24,000 Claude accounts. Anthropic explains that these distilling attacks involve training lesser models on the outputs of stronger ones to acquire capabilities in a quicker time period. They explain the risk in the following quote: "Foreign labs that distill American models can then feed these unprotected capabilities into military, intelligence, and surveillance systems, enabling authoritarian governments to deploy frontier AI for offensive cyber operations, disinformation campaigns, and mass surveillance. If distilled models are open source, this risk multiplies as these capabilities spread freely beyond any single government's control." Continuing, they explain, Anthropic has consistently supported export controls to help maintain America's lead in AI. Distillation attacks undermine those controls by allowing foreign labs, including those subject to the control of the Chinese Communist Party, to close the competitive advantage that export controls are designed to preserve through other means. The following day, February 25th, 3 vulnerabilities were announced to have been found in Claude Code, all of which can result in remote code execution and AI credential theft. On February 26th, The CEO of Anthropic released a statement on how the US Department of Defense was pressuring Anthropic leadership to allow the use of their AI model in mass domestic surveillance and autonomous weapons. Anthropic has not willingly allowed their tools to be used in these use cases and have said that not allowing these use cases have not limited their growth or adoption. In his statement, the CEO of Anthropic explains the following. The Department of War has stated they will only contract with AI companies who accede to, quote, any lawful use and remove safeguards in the cases mentioned above. They have threatened to remove us from their systems if we maintain these safeguards. They have also threatened to designate us as a supply chain risk, a label preserved for U.S. adversaries never before applied to an American company, and to invoke the Defense Production Act to enforce the safeguards removal. These latter two threats are inherently contradictory. One labels us as a security risk. The other labels Claude as an essential to national security. Regardless, these threats do not change our position. We cannot, in good conscience, accede to their request. On Friday, February 27th, Anthropic was brought into a war. U.S. Secretary of Defense demanded the Pentagon label Anthropic as a supply chain risk. This labeling would prevent anyone who is doing business with the military from doing any business with Anthropic. Designating Anthropic as a supply chain risk would be an unprecedented action, one historically reserved for U.S. adversaries, never before publicly applied to an American company. We are deeply saddened by these developments. As the first frontier AI company to deploy models in the U.S. government's classified networks, Anthropic has supported American warfighters since June 2024 and has every intention of continuing to do so. The CEO goes on to explain that they do not believe the models to be good enough to be used in fully autonomous weapons, as well as mass domestic surveillance of Americans to be a violation of fundamental rights. So then OpenAI decides that they would pick up the helm and continue to work and do the things that Anthropic was doing with the Department of Defense. Over the past weekend, Sam Altman has been making public statements condensing down the decision to work with the US government, including that the OpenAI models will not be used for surveillance. OpenAI released a statement saying that their deployment actually has more guardrails than the ones previously in place with Anthropic's models and its function in the US Department of Defense. A lot has happened to Anthropic this past week, and there's going to be a lot of conversation in the comments due to the coverage of this. I ask that we please keep it civil. Speaking of the comments, while there was no video last week, for our most recent video, we had this comment. If your password manager is online, it's vulnerable. I remember in 2020 talking to a security practitioner who told me that he would never let companies he worked at use any password manager like LastPass. That was due to the nature of it being a browser-first password manager and with the vulnerabilities that being browser-first brings with it. And with that whole password management story that we covered in our last episode, I was thinking a lot about that conversation. Thank you so much for watching ThreatWire for the week of March 2nd, 2026. If you enjoyed this show, subscribe. We are so close to 1 million subscribers here. And if you want to find me online, you can find me everywhere at endingwithali. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, good luck, have fun, don't get caught, and subscribe. Subscribe!